I raced down the hallway as if the world were about to end. The sound of my shoes against the linoleum floor echoed around me, that sterile, hollow sound so specific to hospitals, mingling with the sharp scent of disinfectant that stung my nostrils. My heart hammered so fiercely I could feel it throbbing in my temples, my neck, every inch of my 66-year-old body that suddenly felt ancient, impossibly old. Robert, my son, my only son, rushed into emergency. Those words had been delivered over the phone a mere 40 minutes ago, and I hadn't stopped trembling since. Clutching my purse tightly to my chest, I rounded a corner, desperately searching for the room number they'd given me. The numbers seemed to blur on the door plaques. I was so close. I could almost breathe normally. Soon, I would see him. I could hug him, tell him everything would be all right, just as I had done throughout his entire life. Because that's what mothers do, isn't it? We mend what's broken. We heal what hurts. We give everything, absolutely everything, expecting nothing in return. And I had given so much that I sometimes wondered if there was anything left of myself underneath all those layers of sacrifice. But in that moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was reaching that room, seeing my son, understanding what had happened. The phone had rung while I was preparing dinner. I had dropped the spoon into the pot upon hearing Scarlett's cold voice on the other end. Robert is in the hospital. Accident.
Come if you want.
And then she hung up. Just like that, without elaborating on the nature of the accident, its severity, or whether he was even conscious. Just those curt words and that tone she always reserved for me, as if I were a mere nuisance, as if my very existence was an inconvenience in her perfect life with my son.
But there was no time to dwell on that now.
I was almost there. My hands trembled as I smoothed down my coat, trying to control my ragged breathing. She had recorded the entire conversation between Scarlett and the lawyer, every word, every confession, every monstrous detail of their plan. I knew you would be coming today. Scarlett mentioned it this morning to the other nurses, annoyed because she would have to deal with the meddling mother-in-law. So I waited in the hallway. I saw you running desperately, and I knew I had to protect you. I had to stop you from going in there without knowing. And I had to get her to confess.
And she did.
She confessed everything. Tears streamed down my cheeks uncontrollably, tears of relief, mixed with terror, mixed with infinite gratitude towards this unknown woman who had risked her job, perhaps her career, to save my son, to give me a chance to fight. Thank you, I whispered, my voice cracking. Thank you, thank you, thank you. She squeezed my hands tightly. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. Now we have to act quickly and intelligently. Dr. Stevens is already analyzing your son's bag. If he finds evidence of tampering, we'll call the police immediately. But we need more. We need to find the pills she's been using. We need physical evidence. Where would she keep them? I asked, trying to think clearly despite the chaos in my mind. Probably in her purse or in the car. Women like her are arrogant. They feel untouchable. They don't think anyone could ever discover them. Letitia stood up and helped me to my feet. My legs were still shaky, but they supported me. Listen carefully, she urged, looking directly into my eyes with such intensity that I felt empowered, as if victory was within our reach. You're going to walk out of here and act as if you know absolutely nothing. Go straight to your son's room. If necessary, hug that woman, put on a show, a cry, play the part of the desperate mother. It's what she expects to see. Meanwhile, I'll speak with hospital security. I could see it in the softening of her eyes, in the relaxation of her posture. Doris, let me finish, please, I said, squeezing her hand. If Robert survives this, and he has to survive, I want to start over with you. I want to be the mother-in-law you deserve, the grandmother your future children will need, because you are going to have children, aren't you?
You had talked about that.
I saw something flicker in her eyes. Discomfort, guilt perhaps, or simply the annoyance of having to maintain the charade when she already believed she had won. Yes, she finally said. We had talked about it after the business stabilized more, after we had more savings, more lies. There had never been plans for children, Only plans for early widowhood and easy wealth. Well, when he gets out of here, I'm going to help you. I have some savings put away. It's not much, but it's something. Maybe I can help you with the down payment for a bigger house, one with a yard for the kids. It would be my gift to you for the family you're going to build. I saw her eyes gleam for a split second, reflecting pure, unadulterated greed, even now, even in the midst of her meticulously crafted plan. The prospect of more money excited her. You don't have to do that, Doris, she said softly, but her eyes betrayed her. Her eyes were screaming, give me more. Give me everything, star. I want to. It's the least I can do after all these years of distance. Besides, I have no one else. When I die, everything I have will be Robert's anyway, and consequently yours, too. Better to enjoy it together while I'm alive. Now, I was selling myself out completely, painting myself as the foolish old woman with money that she had always believed I was. And it was working. I could see how she relaxed more and more, how the tension left her shoulders. She believed she had finally broken me, that she had finally won my trust. I told him everything from the moment I ran to the hospital until Letitia hid me, about the conversation I overheard between Scarlett and the lawyer, about the poison in his orange juice, about the warfarin in his 4-bag, about the 7 years of lies, about the other 3 victims, about the plan to take everything and leave him to die, as if it were just another accident. I watched as his face went through every possible emotion, disbelief at first, denial, anger, pain, and finally a sadness so deep it broke my heart to see it. It can't be, he whispered when I finished. Scarlett, no. She loves me. She has always been there for me. She took care of me when I was tired. She prepared my juice every morning.
He stopped.
He heard his own words. The juice every morning, exactly as she had confessed in the recording. Do you want to hear the recording? I asked softly. Nurse Letitia recorded everything, her complete confession. He shook his head violently. No, I don't want to. I can't,
he cried.
Then my adult son, my strong man, cried as I hadn't seen him cry since he was a child. He cried for the betrayal, for the lost years, for the love he had believed was real and never existed. I climbed onto the bed carefully and hugged him as I had done 1,000 times when he was little, when he fell off his bike, when a kid bothered him at school, when his first love rejected him. I had always been there to pick up the pieces. And here I was again. I'm sorry, I said, even though I wasn't the one who should apologize. I'm sorry you had to go through this. I'm sorry I didn't notice sooner. I'm sorry I was so blind. It wasn't your fault, he murmured against my shoulder. I didn't see anything either. I lived with her. I slept next to her. I told her my dreams, my fears, my plans, and all the time. He didn't finish the sentence. There was no need. I loved her, Mom, he continued after a while. Or, at least I loved the person I thought she was. I had to be strong for him. I had to be the mother I had always been, the mother who never fails, the mother who is always there, even when no one notices, even when no one appreciates her. That's when I felt it. A firm hand grasped my arm and pulled me aside with surprising force. I nearly screamed in shock, but another hand gently covered my mouth as a female voice whispered urgently in my ear. Hide and wait. Trust me. It was a nurse. I knew from the glimpse of her uniform, from the scent of medicinal soap that emanated from her. She looked to be around 40, with a serious face and dark eyes that shone with a strange intensity. She carefully but firmly guided me towards the half-open door of room 311, directly adjacent to Robert's room. Don't make a sound. Don't come out. Observe and listen. You'll understand everything later. And before I could react, before I could ask her what on earth was going on, she walked briskly down the hall, her shoes creating that same rhythmic sound against the floor. I remained there, paralyzed behind that door, my heart now pounding for entirely different reasons. It was no longer just fear for my son. It was something else, something dark and heavy that I couldn't yet define. The room was empty and dim, smelling of clean sheets and that artificial air conditioning that dries out your mouth. I leaned against the wall, struggling to process what had just happened, trying to understand why a strange nurse had hidden me as if I were in danger. Danger?
Me?
It seemed absurd, but something in her eyes, something in the urgency of her voice compelled me to stay put. Trust me, she had said. And for some inexplicable reason, I did. Perhaps because in that moment of utter desperation, any outstretched hand felt like a lifeline. Perhaps because after so many years of being invisible, of being ignored, someone was finally seeing me, protecting me, though I couldn't fathom from what. I'm going to have them review the hallway surveillance footage and meticulously document every instance she enters Robert's room alone. And I will personally ensure she doesn't get near that four-bag again. I nodded, trying to absorb all her instructions. Act, pretend, become the foolish, desperate old woman she believes me to be. I could do that. I'd been unwittingly playing that role for years. One more thing, Letitia added in a low voice. Don't tell your son anything yet. If he wakes up, if he's able to speak, don't reveal what you know. He might not believe you. He might think you're exaggerating, that you're jealous, that you're fabricating stories. Men in love are often blind, and she's had 7 years to poison him, not just with medication, but with lies about you. Her words stung more than I anticipated, because I knew they were true. Robert had changed towards me over the years. He'd become distant, irritable, easily annoyed by my presence. How many lunches had he canceled? How many birthdays had he forgotten? How often had he claimed to be too busy to visit? I had always attributed it to work, stress, the natural progression of adulthood and family life. I never considered her, whispering poison in his ear every night, subtly eroding our bond. She's convinced him that his illness is due to overwork, crafting that narrative perfectly. If you burst in there now, accusing her of attempted murder, he'll defend her, and we'll lose our only chance to save him. She was right. Every fiber of my being screamed to run into that room, expose the truth to my son, shake him awake until he recognized the viper he'd welcomed into his life. But I couldn't. I had to be strategic. I had to play the game, at least for now. I wiped away my tears with the back of my hand, smoothed down my coat, and took a final, deep breath. All right, I said, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. I'll do it. I'll pretend. But promise me something. Promise me we won't let her win. You are so generous, she said, and even squeezed my hand with what I suppose was meant to look like affection. Robert is very lucky to have you as a mother. I had to bite my tongue to keep from spitting the truth at her right there. We continued to talk about trivialities, invented memories, future plans that would never materialize. I played my role as the repentant mother-in-law, and she played hers as the forgiving daughter-in-law. 2 actresses on a small stage, waiting for the curtain to fall. I glanced at the clock discreetly. 15 minutes had passed. 5 more. Just 5 more minutes, and the police would arrive. Just 5 more minutes, and all this theater would end. You know what I would like? I said suddenly, as if the thought had just occurred to me. I would like it if, when Robert wakes up, the first thing he sees is the 2 most important women in his life holding hands, united together for him. Scarlett smiled, a smile so sweet, so false, so perfectly rehearsed. I would love that, Doris. I would love that. But then something changed in her expression. A shadow crossed her face. She stiffened and let go of my hand. What is that noise? She asked, turning her head toward the door. I heard it too, then. Voices in the hallway. Multiple voices. Quick footsteps. The unmistakable sound of urgent activity. And then the door burst open. 4 people entered. 2 uniformed police officers, a woman in a suit who was clearly a detective, and behind them, Letitia and Dr. Stevens. Scarlett jumped to her feet, her eyes wide with alarm. What is going on? She demanded. And for the first time since I had known her, her voice sounded genuinely scared. The detective stepped forward, displaying her badge. Scarlett Fernandez de Salazar, I am Detective Audrey Ruiz. I need you to come with us to answer some questions regarding your husband's condition. Questions? What kind of questions? My husband is sick. He had a collapse. How could I have been so stupid? How did I not see the signs? Because that's how people like her operate, I said softly. They are experts in manipulation, in making you believe exactly what they want you to believe. You weren't stupid. You were human. You trusted because that's what good people do. They trust. We stayed like that for a long time, mother and son, survivors of a storm that had almost destroyed both of us. Mom, he finally said, pulling back a little to look me in the eyes. She said things about you, didn't she? All these years, she said things that made me pull away from you. I nodded slowly. I didn't want to put more burden on him, but I needed the truth between us. Yes, I guess so. You started to change with me about 3 years ago, more distant, colder, as if my presence bothered you. He closed his eyes in shame. She told me you were controlling, that you wanted to separate us, that you spoke badly about her behind her back, that you gave her expensive gifts just to make her feel bad, to show that she couldn't afford those luxuries. Every time I mentioned visiting you, she would cry. She would say you made her feel inferior, that you would never accept her.
And
I believed her. God, I was such an idiot. No, I said firmly. You weren't an idiot. You loved your wife, and you wanted to protect her. That makes you a good person, not an idiot. She twisted that love. She used it as a weapon against you, against us. I treated you so badly, Mom. I canceled lunches. I forgot your birthday. I made you feel unwelcome in my own house, in the house you bought with your money. My God. His voice broke again. How can you even look at me now? How can you be here after everything I put you through? I took his face in both hands, forcing him to look at me. Because you are my son. Because I love you more than my own life. Because a mother doesn't abandon. My breathing gradually calmed as my eyes adjusted to the gloom. I could make out the silhouette of the empty bed, the four-pole hanging like a metallic skeleton, the closed curtains that allowed only a sliver of light to penetrate from the hallway. Less than a minute passed, 60 seconds that felt like an eternity. And then I heard them. Voices emanating from the hallway. Scarlett's voice, unmistakable, with that sugary tone she adopted when she wanted something, and another voice, masculine, unfamiliar, formal. They stopped directly in front of room 312, right across from my hiding place. My entire body tensed. I held my breath, without even realizing it. Are you sure no one will see us here? The man asked. Scarlett emitted a short, dry laugh, like the rustling of dead leaves. The old woman is on her way, but it will still take her a while. The guards don't let just anyone through that quickly. We have plenty of time. Old woman. She called me an old woman. I felt a pang in my chest, as if someone were squeezing my heart. But I forced myself to remain still, to continue listening, because something told me this was just the beginning. Good. Then let's go over the documents one more time. The transfer of the house has to be finalized before he wakes up. If he asks any questions, you'll say he signed everything before the accident. Understood? The house. Our house. The house I had purchased with my deceased husband's inheritance. The house I had placed in Robert's name because I trusted him, because he was my son, because I never imagined something like this could ever happen. All my security, all my future, handed over on a silver platter because a mother trusts, because a mother gives without expecting anything in return. Understood, Scarlett replied, and there was something in her voice that chilled my blood. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't concern for her husband, hospitalized just feet away. It was satisfaction. It was victory. Promise me my son will live. Promise me that woman will pay for every drop of poison she gave him, every lie she uttered, every second of suffering she inflicted. Letitia helped me to my feet. She did. My legs were still unsteady, but they bore my weight. Listen to me, and listen carefully, she said, locking her gaze on mine with an intensity that sparked a sense of possibility within me, a belief that we could actually win this battle. You are going to leave this room and act as though you know absolutely nothing. Head straight to your son's room. If you have to, hug that woman. Cry, Doris. Put on a show. Play the role of the distraught, desperate mother, the very image she expects to see. Meanwhile, she continued, I'm going to speak with hospital security. I'll have them check the hallway cameras meticulously, documenting each time she enters Robert's room alone. And I'm going to ensure she doesn't get anywhere near that bag again. I nodded, trying to process and absorb all the instructions. Act, pretend, become the foolish, desperate old woman she already believed me to be. I could manage that. In a way, I had been unknowingly playing that part for years. And one more thing, Letitia added, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Don't tell your son anything.
Not yet.
Even if he wakes up, even if he can speak, don't reveal what you know. He might not believe you. He might think you're exaggerating, that you're fueled by jealousy, that you're simply making things up. Men in love often turn a blind eye. And remember, she's had 7 long years to poison his mind, not just with pills, but with lies about you too. Her words struck deeper than I anticipated, because I knew they held a painful truth. Robert had indeed grown distant in recent years, sharp and easily annoyed by my presence. How many lunches had he canceled? How many birthdays had he forgotten? How often had he claimed to be too busy to visit? What does that have to do with the police? Her voice rose in pitch, becoming sharper, more desperate. The mask was beginning to crack. We have found evidence that Mr. Robert Salazar has been the victim of intentional and sustained poisoning. Toxicological analysis shows dangerous levels of warfarin in his system, a substance that was not prescribed to him and was deliberately added to his hospital treatment. The silence that followed was deafening. Scarlett remained completely motionless, her mouth slightly agape, her eyes darting from the detective to the officers to Letitia, calculating, desperately searching for a way out. That's ridiculous, she finally said, her voice now pure ice. The saccharine sweetness had vanished completely. It's a mistake, a medical error. Someone mixed up the medications. That happens all the time in hospitals. It is not a mistake. Dr. Stevens intervened, stepping forward. We have security camera footage that shows you manipulating your husband's bag on 3 separate occasions. We have physical evidence of a substance found. And we have this. Letitia held up her phone and played the recording. Scarlett's voice filled the room, clear as crystal. Asterisk, I've been giving him the crushed pills and his orange juice in the mornings, a little more each week. The doctors think it's stress. No one suspects anything. Here at the hospital, it's easier. I can add things to the 4. In 2 or 3 more days, it will all be over. I watched as the color completely drained from her face, as her legs trembled, as she desperately searched for something to say, some excuse, some lie that could save her. But there was nothing. They had caught her red-handed. That recording was taken out of context, she stammered, her voice lacking any conviction. I never. That's not what it looks like. No matter how much it hurts, no matter how many times she is rejected, she will always be there when her son needs her. He cried again, and I cried with him, for the lost years, for the unspoken words, for all the times I had wanted to call him and didn't because I knew it would annoy him, for all the nights I had gone to bed wondering what I had done wrong, for all the unnecessary pain we had both carried. Detective Audrey came later that day to take Robert's statement. It was difficult. He had to remember details he would rather forget. The mornings he woke up feeling weak, the times Scarlett insisted he take his vitamins, that he drink her special juice, the nights she told him he looked tired, that he was working too hard, that he needed more rest. Everything had been part of the plan. Every gesture of concern was actually another step towards his death. There's something you need to know, Audrey said when she finished taking notes. The house that is in your name, the one your mother bought, Scarlett had initiated the transfer procedures. But we stopped them in time. The property is still yours. We also froze all the bank accounts and blocked any access she had. Your money is safe. Robert looked at me with an expression of absolute horror. Mom, your money, Dad's inheritance, the $180,000. I almost lost everything. But you didn't lose it, I said firmly. We saved it. Both of us saved it. And about the business, Audrey continued, the $200,000 your mother invested, plus the accumulated profits. Everything is protected. Scarlett had no legal rights to any of it, because even though it was in accounts in his name, you never made her the official beneficiary. It was an oversight on your part, but that oversight saved you from losing everything. An oversight. Or maybe deep down, Robert had always known something wasn't right. Maybe a part of him never completely trusted her. "We will need you to testify at the trial," the detective said. It was the sound of someone winning a game I didn't even know was being played. "And what about the business? The $200,000 in the joint account. I can transfer that as well. The money I had loaned, no, that I had given to Robert so he could start his import business. The money he never repaid because, Mom, it's an investment in our future. You'll see. You'll get it back when the business grows. I promise." But the business had grown. The contracts had been signed. The profits had begun to flow. And I was still living in my small, two-room apartment, shopping for supermarket specials, wearing the same clothes from 5 years ago, turning off the lights to save on the electricity bill, while they lived in that sprawling house with a yard and a pool, while Scarlett purchased designer handbags that cost more than 3 months of my rent, while Robert changed cars every 2 years, as if changing shoes. "Technically, it's complicated because you're not listed as the account holder," the man said. And then I recognized his profession. A lawyer. He was a damned lawyer. I could picture him in his expensive suit, his leather briefcase, his impeccably clean hands that had never performed any real labor. But if he doesn't wake up in the next few days, or if he wakes up with severe cognitive damage, you can request temporary guardianship. With that, you'll have access to everything, absolutely everything. The bank accounts, the properties, the investments. Asterisk if he doesn't wake up. Asterisk the words lingered in the air like sharpened blades. If he doesn't wake up, as if it were an acceptable possibility, as if it were even desirable, as if they were discussing the weather or what to have for dinner. I covered my mouth to stifle a scream, to prevent myself from vomiting against that cold hospital wall. My legs trembled so violently that I had to steady myself against the door frame. The wood felt icy under my fingers. This couldn't be happening. It couldn't be real. And I had always attributed it to work, to stress, to the natural progression of adulthood and building his own family. I never imagined it was her, whispering poison into his ear each night, subtly shaping his perception of me. She has carefully crafted a narrative where his illness is a result of his own relentless dedication to his work. If you burst in there now, accusing her of attempted murder, he will defend her and we'll lose our only chance to save him, Letitia emphasized. She was right, of course. Every fiber of my being screamed to run into that room and shout the truth to Robert, to shake him until he awoke and recognized the viper he had welcomed into his life. But I couldn't. I had to be strategic, play the long game, at least for now. I wiped away the tears with the back of my hand, smoothed down my coat, and took a final, deep breath. "It's all right," I managed to say, my voice sounding stronger than I felt. "I'm going to do it. I'm going to pretend. But promise me something, Letitia. Promise me we won't let her win. Promise me my son will live. Promise me that woman will pay for every drop of poison she gave him, for every lie she uttered, for every second of suffering she inflicted." Letitia looked at me with a fierce determination that reminded me why I had trusted her from the very beginning. "I promise you, Doris, that woman will not only lose everything she planned to steal, but she will spend the rest of her life behind bars. I will personally see to it." She carefully opened the door, first peeking out to ensure the hallway was clear. With a barely perceptible nod, she signaled me to leave the room that had been both my refuge and my personal hell for the past few minutes. The hallway was now teeming with people. More nurses, more doctors, more families anxiously awaiting news of their loved ones, each absorbed in their own tragedies, oblivious to the high-stakes drama unfolding just feet away. "We also have your conversation with your lawyer, Mark Delgado, who, by the way, is being interrogated right now," Detective Audrey continued in a firm, professional voice. "We have documents showing attempts at fraudulent property transfers. We have your internet search history for undetectable poisons and poisoning symptoms. We have enough evidence to charge you with premeditated attempted murder and fraud." Scarlett looked at me then, her green eyes, once so beautiful, now filled with pure, unadulterated hatred. It was you, she hissed like a cornered snake. You. Did this meddling old woman, this old witch, really think she could get away with it? I thought, my anger simmering. Couldn't you just keep your mouth shut and let things unfold naturally? You just had to stick your nose where it didn't belong. I rose to my feet, moving towards her with a composure that surprised even me. I stopped directly in front of her, locking my gaze with hers. I am his mother, I stated, my voice low but resonant with authority. And a mother always protects her children. Always. You truly believed you could deceive me, didn't you? You saw me as nothing more than a foolish old woman with money. You thought you could rob me of everything, murder my son, and simply walk away unscathed. But you were wrong. Terribly wrong. Scarlett Fernandez, one of the officers announced, producing a pair of handcuffs. You are under arrest for attempted first-degree murder. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney, and if you cannot afford one, one will be provided for you. The handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists with that unmistakable metallic sound. She initially fought back, screaming that it was all a mistake, that she was being unjustly accused, and that her lawyer would sue them all. I know it's difficult, but your testimony is crucial. You are the direct victim. Your word carries weight. Robert nodded, though he was pale. I'll do it. I want her to pay. I want her to pay for everything. The following days were of slow, but steady recovery. Robert improved every day. Color returned to his face. Strength returned to his muscles. The doctors were amazed at how quickly he healed once the toxins were eliminated from his system. Letitia came to visit him every shift. They had become friends, sharing that strange bond that forms between people who go through something traumatic together. I owe you my life, Robert told her every time. To you and my mother. I was just doing my job, she always replied modestly. But we both knew she had done much more than that. She had risked her career. She had trusted her instincts when everyone else ignored them. She had been brave when it would have been easier to stay quiet. A week after waking up, Robert was finally strong enough to sit in a chair by the window. He looked out toward the city that kept moving without knowing the drama that had unfolded in this room. Mom, he said without turning to look at me, when I get out of here, I want to make things right. I want to give you back your money, every single penny, with interest. You don't need to, I started, but he raised his hand. Yes, I do need to. I need to make it right. I need to show you that I am not that man who ignored you for 3 years, that I am not that son who forgot where he came from. I need to show myself, too. I walked over and sat in the chair next to him. You don't have to show me anything. You already did. You survived. You're here. That's all I need. But I need more, he insisted, finally turning to look at me. I need to get myself back. The man I was before her. The son you were proud to raise. You'll help me find him again. I took his hand and squeezed it hard. Always, my love. Always. It had to be a nightmare. One of those nightmares where you run but can't move, where you scream but no sound emerges. And her? Scarlett asked, and something in the way she emphasized the word her made me feel like an insect, something to be crushed without a second thought. The meddling old woman. Can she claim anything legally? A silence stretched on, feeling like an eternity. The lawyer was checking something, papers perhaps. The crisp sound of paper rustling. Legally, no. According to all the records I reviewed, she's not listed on any official document. Not for the house, not for the business, not for the accounts. Everything is in your husband's name. And as you are the legitimate wife, and he is incapacitated, the law favors you completely. She is nothing. She has no rights. She is just the mother-in-law, a spectator. Asterisk, I am nothing. I have no rights. I am just the mother-in-law, a spectator. Asterisk, the words pierced me like icicles. 66 years of life reduced to that. 40 years of marriage to a good man who had died too young from a heart attack no one saw coming. 38 years raising a son I adored more than my own life. All to hear that I am nothing, that I have no claim to what I myself had built, to what I myself had given with these hands that were now shaking uncontrollably. Scarlett laughed again. That crystalline laugh I had heard countless times at family dinners when she would ask me to do the dishes while she sat with Robert in the living room watching television. That laugh that sounded when I arrived with gifts for them, and she barely mumbled a thank you without looking me in the eyes, without rising from the couch. That laugh I had mistaken for shyness when Robert introduced her to me 7 years ago. How foolish I had been. How blind. How stupid. Perfect. Then we proceed with the original plan. I've been giving him the crushed pills and his orange juice in the mornings, just like you instructed. I approached door 312 with steps that felt foreign, as if I were floating, as if my body were moving on autopilot while my mind remained trapped in the horrifying conversation I had just overheard. My hand trembled as it touched the cold metal of the door. I took one last deep breath and stepped inside. The room was larger than I had imagined, filled with a cacophony of machines, monitors softly beeping, and 4 bags hanging like frozen tears. And in the center of it all, in that sterile white bed, lay my son, my Robert. He looked so small, so fragile, connected to a web of wires and tubes. His skin had taken on a grayish pallor that terrified me. His lips were dry and cracked. Dark circles, deeper than I had ever seen, shadowed his eyes. This wasn't the strong, vital man who had carried my groceries just 2 months ago. This wasn't the bright-eyed boy who had learned to ride his bicycle in the park, shouting, "Look, Mom." No hands, while I ran behind him, terrified he would fall. This was someone consumed, someone destroyed from within. And beside his bed, holding his hand with a delicate grace that I now recognized as pure theater, was her. Scarlett looked impeccable as always, her brown hair perfectly styled, her makeup discreet but elegant, and her cream-colored dress likely cost more than my monthly rent. Her green eyes, which I had once found so beautiful, now seemed like the eyes of a snake. As she saw me enter, her expression instantly transformed. Her eyes welled with tears, and her mouth trembled. She placed a hand on her chest, as if suppressing a sob. "Doris," she said in a broken voice, and even rose to embrace me. I forced myself to accept the hug, to wrap my arms around her, to feel her warm body against mine, and not dwell on the fact that this same body had coldly plotted my son's demise. Her expensive perfume filled my nostrils, a cloying scent of flowers and lies. "Thank you for coming," she whispered against my shoulder. However, the officers remained professional, holding her firmly and guiding her towards the exit. Just before she was led through the doorway, she twisted her head to glare at me one last time. "You think you've won?" she spat, each word laced with venom. "But he'll never believe you. When he wakes up, I'm going to tell him you fabricated everything, that you're consumed by jealousy, that you're insane, and he's going to believe me. He always believes me." I smiled, not with genuine joy, but with the satisfaction of someone who held the winning card. It no longer mattered what he believed. Justice wasn't contingent on his opinion. It relied on the evidence, and the evidence condemned her. They led her away, her screams echoing down the hallway until they faded into the distance. I stood there, trembling from head to toe, as the adrenaline that had sustained me for the past hour finally dissipated. My legs buckled, and Letitia rushed to support me, helping me to a seat before I collapsed completely. "It's over," she whispered, embracing me. "It's over. You were incredible. You saved your son." But I couldn't celebrate yet. Robert was still lying unconscious in that hospital bed, his body still saturated with poison, still fighting for his life. "Doctor," I said, my voice shaky as I looked at Dr. Stevens, "my son, is he going to be all right? Were you able to?" "We initiated the detoxification treatment as soon as we confirmed the warfarin poisoning," he explained reassuringly. "High doses of vitamin K to counteract the anticoagulant, fresh plasma transfusions. His body is young and strong. He has very good chances of a full recovery. Very good chances." It wasn't a guarantee, but it was hope, and hope was more than I had possessed just 2 hours ago. I approached my son's bedside and took his hand again, squeezing it tightly. "Fight, my love," I whispered. Fight for your life. Your mom already did her part. Now, it's up to you. The trial was 6 months later, 6 months in which Robert recovered completely, in which he closed wounds he thought would never heal, in which he learned to trust again, starting by trusting himself. 6 months in which our relationship was rebuilt from the foundations, stronger than before, more honest than ever. We entered that courthouse together, arm in arm. He in a gray suit that made him look like the successful man he was, me in an olive green dress that I had bought especially for the occasion, not out of vanity, but because I wanted to look strong. I wanted her to see that she hadn't been able to destroy me. Scarlett was sitting at the defense table. She looked different. Her hair had lost its shine. Her skin looked pale under the artificial court lights, but her eyes were still the same, cold, calculating. When she saw us enter, something dark crossed her face. Pure hatred.
There were no more masks.
There were no more performances. This was the real Karen Fields, the predator hiding behind the false name of Scarlett. The prosecutor presented the evidence methodically. The audio recordings where she confessed everything, the security videos showing her manipulating the 4-bag, the toxicological analyses, the testimonies of the other 3 men she had previously scammed. Every piece of evidence was another nail in her legal coffin. Letitia testified about how she had noticed the symptoms, about her suspicions, about the investigation she had done, risking her job. Dr. Stevens explained in precise medical terms how the warfarin had been destroying Robert's body from the inside, how, without intervention, he would have died in a matter of days. Detective Audrey presented all the evidence of the fraud, the falsified documents, Karen's criminal history under her multiple identities. It was devastating. One by one, the pillars of her defense crumbled. A little more each week, just half a tablet more. The doctors think it's work stress, accumulated fatigue, his poor eating habits. No one suspects a thing. Absolutely nothing. The world froze completely, as if someone had pressed pause on the entire universe. The pills. She had been giving him pills. To my son, to Robert, to my baby who had grown in my belly, who had nursed at my breast, who had slept in my arms every night of his first 2 years of life. My brain struggled to process what I had just heard, but it was too monstrous, too impossible to believe. This didn't happen in real life. This happened in movies, in news stories from other countries, in stories you read on the internet and think, how awful. Thank goodness something like that would never happen to me. But it was happening. It was happening right now, inches from where I was hiding, like a frightened rat. Here at the hospital, it's even easier, Scarlett continued in that casual, relaxed voice, as if she were discussing a cooking recipe, as if she were sharing a trick for removing stubborn stains. I can add things to the 4 when the nurses are out on their rounds. I have access because I'm the wife. No one questions me. Everyone pities me. They bring me coffee. They tell me to be strong. It's almost comical. In 2 or 3 more days, it will all be over. His heart will simply give out. It will look completely natural. It happens all the time with 42-year-old men who work too hard and don't take care of themselves. The statistics are on our side. 42 years old. My son was 42 years old, and his wife was planning to kill him as casually as one would plan a vacation. I felt my legs give way. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the cold floor of that empty room. My hands covered my mouth so tightly I could feel my own teeth against my lips. I couldn't cry. I couldn't make a sound. I couldn't reveal that I was there, listening to every word of that hellish conversation. I know you had to take 2 buses to get here. I know it's a long way for you, but I needed you to be here. Robert needs you. Liar. Damn liar. She didn't need me here. She had only called me to maintain appearances, to ensure that no one would suspect she had kept his mother away when he finally succumbed. I gently pulled away from her, wiping away tears that were, ironically, completely genuine, even if she believed they were for entirely different reasons. What happened? I asked, my voice sounding exactly as it should, terrified, confused, and utterly desperate. Scarlett sighed dramatically and settled back down next to the bed, resuming her role as the devoted wife. He was at the office. According to his colleagues, he suddenly turned very pale, began sweating profusely, and complained of chest pain and difficulty breathing. They suspected a heart attack and called an ambulance immediately. She paused, dabbing at a tear that was probably as fake as everything else about her. The doctors say his heart is very weak, that he's been under a lot of stress, that he hasn't been taking care of himself. I've told him 1,000 times to slow down, that money isn't worth more than his health. But you know how he is, stubborn as a mule, just like when he was a kid, I guess. That comment was like a calculated hook, an attempt to connect with me, to create a sense of shared concern and understanding, to make me believe we were a team, that we both loved this man and wanted only the best for him. What a consummate actress. What a convincing monster. What are the doctors saying? I asked, moving closer to the bed and taking Robert's other hand. It was cold, too cold. His fingers didn't respond to my touch. What should we expect? That the next 48 hours are critical. That if he wakes up and there's no significant brain damage, he can recover with time and treatment if he wakes up. The next 2 days were the longest of my life. I didn't leave the hospital. I simply couldn't. Letitia arranged a special pass for me to stay in Robert's room around the clock. She brought me coffee, sandwiches that I barely tasted, and blankets when I shivered from the cold in the early morning hours. She had become more than just a nurse. She was my guardian angel, my savior, the sister I never had. Dr. Stevens checked Robert's vital signs every few hours, adjusting medications and patiently explaining every small change. That meddling old woman, that wicked witch. Couldn't she have just kept her mouth shut and let fate take its course? No, she had to poke her nose into affairs that didn't concern her. I rose to my feet slowly, moving towards her with a sense of calm that surprised even me. I stopped right in front of her, meeting her gaze directly. I am his mother, I stated, my voice low but filled with unwavering strength. And a mother always protects her children. Always. You thought you could deceive me, didn't you? You saw me as a foolish old woman with money. You believed you could steal everything from me, murder my son, and walk away scot-free. But you were wrong. Terribly wrong. Scarlett Fernandez, one of the officers announced, producing handcuffs. You are under arrest for attempted murder in the first degree. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney, and if you cannot afford one will be appointed to you. The handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists with that distinct metallic sound. At first, she resisted, screaming that it was all a mistake, that she was being unfairly accused, and that her lawyer would sue them all. But the officers remained professional and composed. They held her firmly and began to escort her out of the room. Just as she was about to cross the threshold, she turned to glare at me one last time. You think you've won? Her lawyer tried to argue that the recordings had been obtained illegally, that the testimonies were circumstantial, that everything could be explained as a series of tragic misunderstandings. But no one believed him. The evidence was too solid, too clear, too damning. Then they called me to the stand. I sat in that hard wooden chair, looking at the jury, the judge, the entire courtroom full of strangers who had come to witness this drama. Mrs. Doris, the prosecutor began, can you tell us in your own words what you heard that day at the hospital? And I told him everything, from my desperation running down that hallway to the moment Letitia hid me, from every venomous word that had come out of that woman's mouth to the moment I understood that my son was being slowly murdered. My voice broke several times. Tears rolled down my cheeks uncontrollably, but I kept talking because my son deserved to be heard, because the other victims deserved justice, because no other mother should go through this hell. And how did you feel when you heard that your son was being poisoned? The prosecutor asked. I looked directly at Karen when I answered. I felt like the world was ending, but I also felt rage, a rage I didn't know existed inside me, rage that someone could be so wicked, so calculating, so cold, rage for having trusted her, for having welcomed her into my family, for having believed she loved my son when all the time she only saw numbers, dollars, property, power. Is there anything else you wish to say? The prosecutor asked. Yes, I said firmly. I want the jury to know that this woman is not the victim of a misunderstanding. She is a professional predator. She has deliberately destroyed lives, And if you don't stop her here, she will continue to do it. The next victim could be someone else, another mother's son, and perhaps that mother won't be as lucky as I was. Perhaps no one will notice the signs in time. Please don't give her that opportunity. Excellent, the lawyer said, and I could hear him gathering his papers, preparing to leave. I'll send you the final documents tonight to your email. Sign them digitally, and I'll take care of the rest. By Friday of next week, everything will be in your name. The house, the business, the accounts. And about the other thing about the hospital plan, I know nothing. Officially, we never had this conversation. Is that clear? Crystal clear, Scarlett replied. You're a genius, Mark. I'll pay you very well when all this is over. Very, very well. Mark. The lawyer's name was Mark. I burned that name into my memory, as if carving it into stone. His footsteps receded down the hall, the sound of expensive shoes against cheap linoleum. But Scarlett remained. I could hear her breathing. I could feel her presence on the other side of that thin wall separating us. And then she spoke, but this time she was alone. She was talking to herself, or perhaps talking to Robert, who lay unconscious in that bed. Poor fool, she whispered, and her voice was filled with a venom so potent it burned to hear it. You thought you'd won me over with your cheap flowers and your empty promises. I never loved you, not for a single day. But you had what I needed, a stupid mother with money, a growing business, a paid-off house, and enough naivety to put everything in your name without any legal protection. You were the perfect target. Every word was a slap. Every sentence was a dagger aimed straight at my heart. 7 years. They had been married for 7 years. 7 years of lies. 7 years of acting. 7 years I had believed my son was happy. All the moments I had misinterpreted rushed into my mind. All the signs I had ignored. The times I would visit and Scarlett would disappear into the bedroom with some flimsy excuse. The times Robert looked tired, pale, but dismissed it as work stress. The times I offered to help and he abruptly refused, as if my presence bothered him. Those ominous words again, but this time delivered with a feigned sadness that turned my stomach. But they also said, she continued, lowering her voice to a more intimate tone, as if sharing a secret with me, that there is a chance he won't wake up at all, or that he'll wake up, but won't be the same. Cognitive damage, they call it, that he might not be able to work again, that he might need permanent care. She was preparing me, softening the blow. She was laying the groundwork for when he died, ensuring that I would already have accepted the possibility that it was something the doctors had warned about, so that when it happened, no one would question anything. I bit my lip so hard, I tasted blood in my mouth, desperate to maintain control. I couldn't explode, couldn't reveal what I knew. I had to keep acting. It can't be, I whispered, letting my voice genuinely break. He's so young. He has his whole life ahead of him. So much left to do. Scarlett nodded solemnly, wiping away another invisible tear. I know. That's why I've been praying nonstop. That's why I asked Father Thomas to come tomorrow to give him a blessing, just in case. Just in case. Just in case he died as she had meticulously planned. Just in case the poison finally did its deadly work. Just in case no one noticed in time. But someone had noticed. Letitia had noticed. And now I knew too. And we weren't going to let this happen. Can I stay for a moment alone with him? I asked, desperately hoping she would agree. I needed a respite from her toxic presence, a chance to breathe without the suffocating scent of her perfume. Scarlett hesitated, a flicker of distrust crossing her face for a fleeting second before she skillfully reasserted the mask of the understanding daughter-in-law. Of course. I was just going to get some coffee. Do you want anything? Some hot tea, maybe? I shook my head. I just want to talk to my son. She spat, venom dripping from every word. But he will never believe you. When he wakes up, I'm going to tell him you fabricated everything, that you're just jealous and crazy, and he's going to believe me. He always believes me. I smiled, not with joy, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who knows they hold the winning card. It no longer mattered what he believed. Justice wouldn't be swayed by his opinion. It depended on the evidence, and the evidence unequivocally condemned her. They led her away, her screams echoing down the hallway until they faded into the distance. I stood there, trembling from head to toe, finally feeling the adrenaline that had kept me standing for the past hour drain away. My legs buckled, and Letitia rushed to support me, gently helping me to sit down before I collapsed completely. "It's over," she whispered, embracing me. "It's over. You did amazingly. You saved your son." But I couldn't celebrate yet because Robert was still unconscious in that bed. Robert was still fighting the poison that coursed through his veins. Robert was still battling for his life. "Doctor," I said, my voice shaky as I turned to Dr. Stevens. "My son, is he going to be okay? Were you able to?" "We began the detoxification treatment as soon as we confirmed the warfarin," he explained reassuringly. "High doses of vitamin K to counteract the anticoagulant fresh plasma transfusions. His body is young and strong. He has very good chances of a full recovery." Very good chances. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was hope. And hope was more than I had possessed just 2 hours earlier. I approached my son's bedside and took his hand again, squeezing it tightly. "Fight, my love," I whispered. "Fight for your life. Your mom already did her part. Now it's up to you." The next 2 days were the longest of my life. I didn't leave the hospital. I simply couldn't. Letitia arranged a special pass for me to stay in Robert's room around the clock. The defense attorney tried. He tried to undermine my credibility during cross-examination, implying that I was merely a jealous mother, fabricating the entire story out of spite, and suggesting the recordings were doctored. However, I met each of his questions with composure and honesty. Then Robert was called to the stand. Seeing him walk towards it, robust and alive when he should have been dead, was one of the most profound moments I've ever experienced. He recounted their years of marriage, detailing how she had methodically isolated him from me, how he had dismissed his symptoms as mere stress. He spoke of the orange juice she faithfully prepared for him each morning, and how his health steadily declined. Yet, she had convinced him he only needed rest, that the doctors were exaggerating, and that everything would be all right. "Did you love her?" the prosecutor inquired. "I loved the person I thought she was," Robert replied resolutely. "But that person never existed. She was a facade, a character designed to manipulate me, to rob me, and ultimately, to kill me. And now, what do you feel for her?" Robert looked directly at Karen for the first time since the trial's commencement. "Pity," he finally stated. "Pity that someone could live such a life devoid of genuine love and connection, always scheming, always calculating. What a desolate existence that must be." I caught a flicker in Karen's eyes. For the first time since this ordeal began, I witnessed her genuinely affected, not by guilt, but by the sheer contempt in Robert's voice, the contempt of a man who is no longer in her thrall. The jury's deliberation lasted less than 3 hours. Upon their return, the judge inquired, "Has the jury reached a verdict?" "Yes, Your Honor," the foreman responded. "On the charge of attempted first-degree murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of aggravated fraud, guilty. On the charge of falsification of documents, guilty." "Mom, I'm not a kid anymore. I can handle my own problems." But they weren't his problems. It was her. It was the poison he was drinking without knowing it every morning with his orange juice. It was the monster sleeping next to him every night, plotting his death while he dreamed of a future that would never come. "And as for you, you meddling old lady," Scarlett continued, and I realized with horror that even though she couldn't see me, she knew I existed. She knew I was an obstacle in her path. "As soon as this is over, I'll erase you from our lives forever. You won't even have the right to visit his grave because legally, you're nothing. You're just the witch who never accepted me, who always looked at me with suspicion, who always tried to sow discord between Robert and me." That wasn't true. I had tried to accept her. God knew I had tried with every fiber of my being, because she was the woman my son had chosen, because seeing him happy was the only thing that mattered to me. I had swallowed 1,000 humiliations. I had smiled when she criticized my clothes, my haircut, my cooking. I had washed her dishes after dinners where I wasn't even offered a decent plate, where I ate the leftovers standing in the kitchen while they dined in the dining room. I had purchased expensive gifts for her birthdays, for Christmas, for every special occasion. Gifts she opened without emotion and left forgotten in some corner. I had taken care of their house when they traveled, watering the plants, collecting the mail, dusting. I had been the perfect mother and mother-in-law, the one who doesn't intrude, the one who doesn't offer an opinion, the one who gives and gives and gives without asking for anything in return. And this was how they repaid me. With poison, with theft, with planned murder. I heard her footsteps finally receding. The sound of her heels against the floor, that constant tapping that had once seemed elegant to me, but now sounded like the ticking of a bomb. She nodded and left the room with her signature elegant stride, closing the door softly behind her. As soon as she was gone, I collapsed onto the bed, hugging Robert with all the care in the world, careful not to dislodge any of the wires. "Forgive me," I whispered into his hair that smelled of hospital disinfectant and sickness. "Forgive me for not realizing sooner, for not protecting you. But I swear on everything I hold dear that I'm not going to let her win. I'm going to get you through this, my love. I'm going to save you, even if it's the last thing I do in this life." I kissed his forehead with infinite tenderness, feeling the cold, clammy skin beneath my lips. His eyelids trembled slightly, as if somewhere deep in his unconsciousness, he could hear me, as if a part of him knew that his mother was there, fighting for him, as she always had. I dried my tears and sat up just as the door opened again. But it wasn't Scarlett. It was Letitia, pushing a cart laden with medications. She gave me an almost imperceptible nod. There was news. "Mrs. Doris," she said in a professional tone, flawlessly playing her role. "Could you come with me for a moment? Dr. Stevens wants to speak with you about your son's condition. It will only take a few minutes." I nodded and followed her out of the room, down the hallway to a small, empty consultation room. As soon as she closed the door, her demeanor shifted completely. She was no longer the kind, professional nurse. She was a warrior armed with crucial information. "We found it," she said without preamble. Dr. Stevens analyzed the 4-bag and found traces of warfarin. It's a very powerful anticoagulant. In controlled doses, it's used medically, but in the quantities we found, it's designed to cause internal hemorrhaging. The room seemed to spin around me. Warfarin, anticoagulant, internal hemorrhaging. My son was slowly bleeding to death from the inside, and no one had suspected a thing until now. She brought me coffee, sandwiches that I barely tasted, and blankets when I shivered from the cold in the early morning hours. She had become more than just a nurse. She was my guardian angel, my savior, the sister I never had. Dr. Stevens came every few hours to check Robert's vital signs, adjust medications, and patiently explain every small change in his condition to me. "His levels are improving," he would tell me, showing me graphs I barely understood. But those words sounded like celestial music. "The treatment is working. His body is responding. It's just a matter of time."
Time.
That word had become my religion. Every minute that passed was a minute further away from the poison's grip. Every hour was a small victory against the death that Scarlett had so coldly planned. I sat next to his bed and talked to him. I told him stories from his childhood, about the time he got lost in the supermarket, and I found him crying in the cereal aisle, about his first day of school when he clung to my leg, refusing to let go, about all the Christmases, the birthdays, the small moments that build a life. "You have to wake up," I told him over and over. "You have to wake up because there is still so much to live for. So much you haven't done. You can't leave like this. You can't leave me like this." Sometimes his eyelids trembled. Sometimes his fingers moved slightly, and I clung to those signs like a castaway to a piece of driftwood. Detective Audrey came to see me on the second day. She brought a truly decent coffee, not the watery kind from the hospital machine, and sat with me in that silent room. "I wanted to update you on the case," she said in a professional but kind voice. "Scarlett is being held without bail. The charges are serious: attempted murder, fraud, tampering with evidence." Her lawyer, Mark Delgado, is cooperating with us in exchange for a reduced sentence. On all charges presented, we find her guilty. The gavel fell, its sound resonating through the courtroom like a thunderclap. Karen showed no tears, made no pleas. She merely sat there, as stiff as a board, as the officers approached. The sentence, 32 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for 20 years. 32 years, ample time for her beauty to fade and for her to atone for every life she had shattered. As she was being escorted from the room, she paused by our table. She fixed Robert and me with a venomous glare from those green eyes. "This isn't over," she hissed. "I'll find a way out." "You won't," Robert interrupted her, his voice utterly calm. "And even if you did, I no longer care.
You hold no power over me.
You're just another criminal on her way to prison. Nothing special, nothing memorable, nothing at all." It was the final, crushing blow. Watching her ego crumble, watching the weight of her situation finally dawn on her. They led her away, and that was the last time we ever saw her. Outside the courthouse, a throng of reporters awaited us. Robert had decided to speak publicly about what had transpired, hoping to warn others and give his story a purpose. "My name is Robert Salazar," he began before the cameras. "And I almost died at the hands of the woman I married. But I stand here today thanks to three remarkable individuals. Leticia Sanchez, a nurse who trusted her instincts, Dr. Stevens, who took her concerns seriously, and my mother, Doris, who never gave up on me, even when I pushed her away." He scanned the crowd for me and extended his hand. I walked over and took it. "Mom, please forgive me for the lost years, for the ignored calls, for the forgotten birthdays, for making you feel unimportant. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you." Tears welled in my eyes.
"You already have," I said. "You survived."
That's all I ever needed. 3 months later, we sold the house. She was gone. She entered Robert's room and gently closed the door. And I remained there, sitting on the floor of that dark room, shaking like a leaf in the midst of a hurricane. I don't know how much time passed. It could have been seconds or minutes or an entire eternity. Time had ceased to have any meaning. Everything had ceased to have any meaning. My entire life, all my decisions, all my sacrifices had crumbled in less than 10 minutes, like a house of cards, like a mirage that vanishes as you approach. My hands trembled so violently that I had to hug myself to keep from completely falling apart. I felt a coldness that emanated from within, from some deep place I didn't know existed. My teeth chattered. My entire body trembled with waves of panic that rose from my stomach to my throat. Robert was dying. Not from an accident, not from bad luck. He was being murdered. His own wife was poisoning him, day after day, sip after sip, and no one knew it. No one except that mysterious nurse who had hidden me here, that woman who had appeared like an angel, like a divine sign, just in time to prevent me from walking in there oblivious to everything, to save me from confronting Scarlett while she played her role as the concerned wife, to give me the information I needed, though I didn't yet know what to do with it. What was I supposed to do? Run out and scream? Call the police? Burst into that room and claw out that woman's eyes with my bare hands? Every option seemed impossible. Every path seemed to lead to a deeper abyss, because she was right about one thing. Legally, I was nothing. I had no proof. I had only overheard a conversation, my word against hers, a hysterical old woman against a young, beautiful wife weeping over her sick husband. The door suddenly opened, and I nearly had a heart attack. It was her, the nurse. She entered quickly, closed the door behind her, and switched on a small lamp in the corner. "It was not prescribed for him," Leticia continued, her voice tight with urgency. "Someone added it to the 4 after it was prepared. And there's more. We checked the security cameras from the last 24 hours. There are 3 instances where Scarlett enters the room alone, when there's no nurse nearby. In 2 of those instances, she is clearly seen manipulating the 4 bag. We have visual evidence." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. We had proof, real proof. Not just the audio recording, but also physical evidence and video footage. "Did you call the police yet?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Letitia shook her head. Dr. Stevens is doing that right now. But there's a problem. Scarlett has legal rights as his wife. If she suspects anything, she could leave before the police arrive, destroy evidence, contact her lawyer, and prepare a defense. We need to keep her here, without her suspecting anything, until the officers arrive. How long? 20 minutes. Half an hour, maximum. The nearest station is 10 minutes away, but they have to prepare the warrant, come with specialized detectives. You have to go back in there and act like nothing happened. Keep her busy. Keep her talking. Do whatever it takes. 20 minutes, half an hour. An eternity when you're acting in front of someone who meticulously planned to kill your son. But I could do it. I had to do it. There's something else, Letitia said, pulling out her phone again. While checking the cameras, we found this. It's from 3 days ago. She showed me a black and white video of Scarlett in the hospital parking lot, talking on the phone. There was no audio, but I could clearly see her body language. She was relaxed, almost happy. She was smiling. At one point, she even laughed. A woman whose husband is gravely ill doesn't laugh like that in a hospital parking lot, Letitia said with disgust. He has confessed to the entire plan, the property transfers they were preparing, the falsified documents, everything. I nodded, feeling a dark satisfaction I didn't know I was capable of feeling. How much time will she serve in prison? If we convict her on all counts, we are talking about between 25 and 30 years minimum. And with the evidence we have, it's almost impossible for her to be acquitted. 25 to 30 years. An entire lifetime. Enough time for her beauty to fade behind bars. Enough time for her to pay for every drop of poison she gave my son. There's something else you should know, Audrey continued, pulling a folder from her briefcase. We investigated her past. Scarlett is not her real name. Her name is Karen Fields. She has a record in 2 different states for fraud and scams. She marries men with money, manipulates them into signing over their assets, and then disappears. Your son was not her first victim. He was the 4th. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. 4th. Robert was her 4th victim. The others? I couldn't finish the question. Audrey shook her head. The other 3 survived, but they lost everything, houses, businesses, savings. One of them tried to report her, but she had been so meticulous with the paperwork that they couldn't prove anything. He declared bankruptcy and fled to another state. She changed her name, changed her appearance, and started over with your son. She finally made a mistake. She was too ambitious, too impatient. And thanks to that, we caught her. She showed me photos. Scarlett with different hair color, Scarlett with a different style, but the same cold eyes, the same calculating smile. These men want to testify, Audrey said. They want to tell their stories. They're going to help build a pattern of behavior that will make it impossible for her to claim this was a misunderstanding or a mistake. She is a professional predator, and she is finally going to pay for everything. That house, once purchased with so much love, now held only bitter memories. With the proceeds, Robert bought a new apartment, smaller but filled with light. And with the remainder, we did something I would never have imagined. We created a foundation. It's called Vigilant Mothers, and it's dedicated to assisting families who have fallen victim to fraud or domestic abuse. We offer free legal advice, psychological support, and temporary shelter when needed. Letitia is part of the team, helping to identify signs of poisoning or abuse in medical settings and training other nurses to trust their intuition. In our first year, we aided 17 families, 17 stories that could have ended in tragedy but found help in time. And I, Doris, the old woman they thought was invisible, became the voice of those who couldn't speak for themselves. I give talks at hospitals, community centers, anywhere I'm invited. I share my story without shame because the shame belongs not to me, but to the predators who hide behind charming smiles. Today, as I write these words from my new apartment with an ocean view, an apartment I purchased for myself with my own recovered savings, I feel something I haven't felt in years. Peace. My son comes over for lunch every Sunday. We cook together, we laugh together, and we plan the future together. We've made up for lost time not by dwelling on the past, but by building something new. And when I reflect on that terrifying night in the hospital, when I overheard those whispered murder plans in the hallway, I no longer feel just pain. I also feel gratitude, because that night I discovered something about myself I never knew existed. I discovered that I am stronger than I thought, braver than I imagined, and more powerful than anyone, including myself, had ever believed. I am Doris. I am 66 years old. And finally, after a lifetime of giving, I learned to fight. And I won. The dim light allowed me to see her clearly for the first time. Her face was etched with determination, her eyes bright but serious, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her badge read Leticia Sanchez, specialized nurse. She looked directly at me and knelt down in front of me, taking my frozen hands in her warm ones. "Breathe," she said in a firm but kind voice. "Breathe deeply. I know you're in shock. I know what you just heard is monstrous, but I need you to calm down. I need you to think clearly because your son doesn't have much time." Her words were like a slap that jolted me awake. She was right. I couldn't fall apart, not now. Later there would be time to cry, to scream, to process everything. But now I had to act. I had to save my son. I took a deep breath, once, twice, 3 times. The air came in raggedly, but it came. My heart was still racing, but at least it was still beating. "How did you know?" I managed to ask in a hoarse voice. "How did you know that she—" Leticia sighed and sat on the floor next to me, leaning her back against the wall. "I've been caring for your son during his outpatient consultations for 3 weeks. He came in every 5 days with strange symptoms, extreme fatigue, dizziness, nausea, and irregular heartbeat. The doctors couldn't find anything conclusive. They said it was stress. But I've seen these symptoms before. My sister died this way 4 years ago. Her husband poisoned her with anticoagulants for months. By the time we realized what was happening, it was too late. Her body was destroyed from the inside." Her voice broke as she spoke those last words, and I could see the old pain shining in her eyes. She had lost her sister in the same horrific way, and now she was trying to save my son. She was trying to prevent another family from living her same nightmare. "I began to suspect something a week ago," she continued. "The wife was always too calm, too controlled. She never cried, never despaired. We asked the tech department to try to read her lips or recover audio from the environment, but it's difficult. However, there's a moment when she looks directly toward a nearby camera, unaware it's there, and you can clearly read what she says." She paused the video at that exact moment and zoomed in on the image. Scarlett was saying something, and even without sound, it was perfectly clear on her lips. "Soon I'll be free." 3 words that confirmed everything, that sealed her fate, that proved this wasn't grief-stricken love, but cold, calculated malice. "This will also be given to the police," Leticia said, putting away the phone. "It's more ammunition, more evidence that this was premeditated, planned, executed with full awareness of what she was doing." I nodded, feeling something inside me harden. I was no longer just the desperate mother, no longer the foolish old woman who had been manipulated for years. I was someone new, someone stronger, someone willing to do whatever was necessary to protect her son. "I'm going back," I said, with a firmness that surprised even myself. "I'm going to keep her there. And when the police arrive, I want to be present. I want to see her face when she realizes she's lost, that her whole performance was in vain, that the stupid old woman wasn't so stupid after all." Leticia smiled for the first time since all this had begun. "You're stronger than you think, Doris. Your son is lucky to have you." Her words filled me with something I hadn't felt in a long time: pride, purpose, power. I returned to the room with measured steps, controlling my breathing, preparing for my final act. Scarlett had already returned and was sitting in the same position, holding Robert's hand, looking at him with that false expression of concern that I could now clearly see for what it was. "Everything all right?" she asked as I entered. "What did the doctor want?" "Just to check some paperwork," I lied with surprising ease. I looked at my son sleeping in that bed and felt a surge of gratitude mixed with rage. Gratitude because I had saved him in time. Rage because I had been so close to losing him, so close to her winning. Thank you, I told Audrey. Thank you for taking this seriously, for investigating, for not letting her get away with it. She squeezed my hand. It's my job, but more than that, it's my duty. Women like her cannot continue destroying lives. Your bravery in acting fast, in trusting Letitia, in staying calm, that is what truly saved your son. You are a hero, Doris. A hero. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like an exhausted mother who had done the only thing she knew how to do. Protect her son. That was all. On the third day, just as the sun began to stream through the room's window, filling it with a golden, warm light, it happened. Robert's fingers moved. It wasn't an unconscious tremor. It was a deliberate movement. He squeezed my hand. I shouted for the nurses without letting go of his hand. Letitia came running, followed by another nurse, and then Dr. Stevens. He's waking up, the doctor said, checking his eyes with a small flashlight. Robert, if you can hear me, squeeze your mother's hand again. And he did. He squeezed my hand harder this time. Tears rolled uncontrollably down my cheeks. My love, I whispered over and over. You're here. You're alive. You're okay. His eyelids began to move slowly, as if they weighed a ton. They opened. His eyes, those brown eyes I had known since the day he was born, looked at me confusedly at first, lost, but then they focused. He recognized me. Mom, he whispered in a hoarse, barely audible voice. That single word broke down all the barriers I had erected. I collapsed onto the bed, crying against his chest, feeling his hand weakly rise to touch my hair. I'm here, I said between sobs. I'm here, my love. You're safe. Everything is going to be all right. Dr. Stevens gave us a few minutes before starting the examinations. She only asked about the test results, the recovery times, the legal procedures if he became incapacitated, strange questions for someone who supposedly loves her partner. Then I asked to see his old blood tests from 6 months ago, before the symptoms started, and I compared them with the current ones. There's an enormous difference. His levels of certain substances are completely altered in a way that's not natural, in a way that only happens with intentional and sustained poisoning. Letitia retrieved her phone and showed me a series of numbers and graphs that I didn't fully comprehend but appeared terrifying. Red lines spiking up and down like roller coasters, values marked with exclamation points. I spoke with Dr. Stevens, the head of toxicology. He's the only one I trust here. I shared my suspicions with him. He agreed to investigate discreetly, but we needed more solid proof. We needed to catch her in the act. She showed me her phone again, but this time it wasn't graphs. It was a recording app. She had been recording. Administrative things, nothing important. I sat in the chair on the other side of the bed and looked directly at her. It was time to play my most crucial role. Scarlett, I need to tell you something. She looked up, her expression cautious. What is it? I've been unfair to you. The words came out of my mouth like sweet poison. All these years I've been cold, distant. I know you felt it. I know you've tried to get close to me, and I've rejected you, again and again. I saw her eyes widen with genuine surprise. This wasn't the script she had anticipated. That's not true, she started to say, but I interrupted her. Yes, it is. And I want to apologize because now, seeing my son like this, I realize that life is too short. Too short for stupid grudges. Too short for silly pride. I leaned forward, taking her free hand in mine. She tensed slightly, but didn't pull away. You are the woman my son chose, the woman who makes him happy, and I should have celebrated that instead of feeling jealous because that's what it was, jealousy. Fear of losing him, fear of no longer being the most important woman in his life. Every word was a perfectly crafted lie. Every sentence was a hook, and she was taking the bait. He checked his reflexes, his vision, his cognitive ability. He asked simple questions, name, date of birth, where he lived. Robert answered everything correctly, though he searched slowly for the words. There is no apparent brain damage, the doctor finally announced with a smile. It's a miracle considering the amount of toxins in his system, but he's young, strong, and the treatment came just in time. Just in time, thanks to Letitia. Thanks to that extraordinary nurse who had trusted her instincts, who had seen what no one else saw. Robert looked around the room, confused. What happened? He asked. Why am I here? The last thing I remember is being at the office and feeling sick. And then nothing. I sat in the chair next to his bed, taking his hand in mine. This was the moment I had dreaded, the moment to tell him the truth. The truth about the woman he had married, the woman who had slept next to him for 7 years while plotting his death. Robert, there's something you need to know, I began in a soft but firm voice. Something terrible, but I need you to listen to me until the end.
Can you do that?
He nodded, though I could see the fear growing in his eyes. Fear of what he was about to hear. Fear of a truth he probably already suspected in some deep corner of his mind.